Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Supervisor gave me a verbal warning for being their best employee and then complained that I'm following the rules as a result? Fine, let me talk to your supervisor. Setup. Back in 2018 I started working at a delivery company. When I started working they gave me a rule book that stated that all drivers cannot exceed 5 miles per hour over the designated speed limit. All drivers were required to take their lunch breaks, 30 minutes unpaid, on the way back to our facility at the end of their first run. Most drivers had 2 runs in a day. And we were also required to load our vans ourselves in the morning and unload any undelivered items when we got back. Our delivery vans were equipped with trackers that monitored our speed and would beep loudly if you went over 74 miles per hour. Malicious compliance. I had been working at this company for over a year without any issue, and I had quickly became one of the more valuable drivers by taking on extra runs and staying late to help out other drivers. Most of the time my delivery routes took me on highways that were listed at 65 miles per hour, but if I was covering another driver's route, there was a chance that the highways were listed at 55 miles per hour. I was the driver that finished their runs in record time by not taking my lunch break and driving just under the van tracker's max speed trigger, even if it meant going 20 miles per hour above the listed speed limit. I did this because our company prided itself on having fast response time on same-day deliveries, and my supervisors turned a blind eye to my speeding. That is, until they gave me a verbal warning about speeding. I'm not sure what happened to make them change. All I know is that as soon as I got the warning, I initiated malicious compliance mode. I started doing everything by the book. I drove at exactly the listed speed limit, and started taking my lunch breaks. My efficiency tanked and the company was falling behind on deliveries because I wasn't there to take on any last-minute orders, so they had to hire more drivers. I would just sit in a parking lot somewhere listening to Reddit stories on YouTube during the entirety of my lunch breaks. And to make things even better, if there were slower vehicles on the highway I would make sure to stay behind them and drive at their speed, even if it meant driving at 10 to 20 miles per hour under the speed limit. Fallout. My supervisors were extremely upset at me for causing them so many issues, but they couldn't really do anything about it. And oh boy did they try. They tried changing my routes, giving me only 1 run for the day, and telling me that I was required to take my lunch break after I returned from my run. I ended up getting them off my back by going to my supervisor's supervisor and explaining everything to them, which in turn basically made me untouchable to my supervisors. I simply continued following the rules, and if I ended up with overtime because of it, oh well. That's on the supervisor's head, not mine. The next one is titled, Only Take Breaks When I Tell You to. Sure, no problem. I used to work at a call center where we would get flooded with calls constantly. This is a story of how a busybody boss thought they understood everything since they were in charge. At the work we were given 2 15-minute breaks and 1 45-minute lunch break. The breaks were scheduled into our day so you could see when they would be, but this would change day by day. My role was a bit different than the normal agents as I was specifically dealing with the higher issue calls. These calls could take up to 1 hour to complete and the caller would need to stay on the line, unless they were fine with a call back later, but this was rarely the case. Since I never knew when I would be getting these calls, my break times were a shot in the dark if I would or wouldn't be on a call. I would just take them as soon as the call was done if they ever intersected, which they did 99% of the time. Enter my boss. During a performance review I hit all the marks except for attendance. I asked about this as I know I missed a few days, but always with a reasonable update for time frame, and never had a no-show day, where there is no warning that I'm not coming in. My boss stated that attendance also applies to break and lunch times, and since I rarely took them at the requested time, I was getting written up. I explained my role, that they hired me for, and the challenges involved. They did not care and stated I needed to take breaks when I was told to. I asked for them to send me an email so that I could print it out, put it on my desk and never forget again. My boss smiled ear to ear, probably because they thought I was groveling at that point, and sure enough they did, stating in the email, "You must take your breaks only when the schedule tells you to, no time else. There is no excuse." I saved it, printed it out, sent a copy to my own email and followed it to the letter. Next call that happened that same day of course had the long call crossing over with a break issue. I asked the customer if it would be okay for a call back. They said no. I stated that unfortunately I cannot stay on the line as I am required to take my break. They became enraged and demanded to speak with my boss. I told my boss. They said that I need to apologize and finish the call. I showed them the email they just sent to me and said, "You told me to take my break at this time no matter what. I'm just doing what you told me to do. I'm taking my break. Would you like the customer transferred over? Or should I just hang up?" They took the call over, and from that day on I never had a missed attendance mark. God, busybody bosses are the worst. The next one is titled, "Phones Must Be Left in the Office." I work in a dental practice, and over the Christmas period we had too many staff and not enough patients. This resulted in a lot of people using their phones during their shift, as all of the things they could have done had been finished. My manager wasn't happy with this, so they sent out an email demanding all employees leave their phones in the office during the day, and we can't have them on us. I left my phone in my bag, in my locker, in a locked room. I got pulled up for not putting my phone in the office. It's one rule for everyone, except the receptionist that watches TV shows on her phone all day. She's exempt for some reason, and if I didn't put my phone into the office, I would get a written warning on my record. Day 1, I put my phone into the office, even though it was safe in my locker, but I must follow the rules. Day 2, I left my phone in my locker, and put an old phone in the office. I must follow the rules. The rules didn't specify it has to be the phone I use daily, just that it is a phone I own. The next one is titled, "Can't Eat Around Residents." Okay, then I can't answer call lights. Can't be two places at once. I work in a nursing home on the 3 to 11 shift as a certified nursing assistant, CNA. What happens a lot is the CNAs will go to get food around 7:30 or 8 o'clock after they've put the majority of the residents to bed. Some of the residents figured out when we normally eat lunch and come out to passively beg for our food or try to give us money to go get them some. Legally, we can't touch their money, especially if we have pizza. Don't even mention the word pizza in a nursing home unless you want a mob of people around you. A few residents complained about the CNAs teasing them with food that they can't have by eating in front of them. The facility made it a rule that we could not eat where the residents can see us. The problem is, the break room is a side room attached to the dining room. Sometimes when we're in the break room eating, we could look up and see residents staring at us through the glass door. That means we can't even eat in the break room. The CNAs didn't even talk about this compliance. We just all did it. The facility put in a rule that we absolutely had to take our lunch break about a week before this happened because CNAs would put that they didn't have lunch at the time clock, which led to them paying overtime. Even if there was one CNA on the hall, that CNA still had to take a lunch break according to their rules. When I was the only CNA on a hall, I would pick up my lunch and eat while still answering call lights because I was the only CNA to answer them, but since I couldn't eat where the residents saw me, so I stayed out of the building for my lunch break. Because we stayed gone the entire time, they started getting complaints that call lights were being ignored. The nurses were doing their own malicious compliance because the director of nursing, Don, was jumping down their throats for answering lights while they were passing out medicine. "You can't lock up the cart to answer a light during med pass," is what she would screech at them. So when the aides were on lunch, the nurses weren't answering the lights either. No residents were harmed during this malicious compliance. This led to a lot of complaints and phone calls to the Don's cell phone at night because the residents would call their family members who would then call the Don. One night at around 7:45, the Don stormed up to me while I was eating lunch in my car. She was in her pajamas, so I knew she wasn't happy. "Don, why aren't you in the hall? I'm getting phone calls about call lights not being answered." "Me, I'm on my lunch break." "Don, you can't leave the hall unattended." Me, according to the in-service and the write-up that you made me sign, I have to take a lunch break whether I'm the only aide on the hall or not, and I'm not allowed to eat in front of the residents, so I can't be in there. We're also not allowed to work while off the clock. When she realized the corner her rules back us into, she practically short-circuited. She wasn't even making words anymore. She looked around and saw 2 other CNAs eating in their cars. These ladies were kind of sassy and weren't going to take any crap from her, so she didn't even bother. She stormed into the building, and I didn't see her again until my lunch break was over. She apparently answered the call lights in her pajamas. For anyone that is curious, the call lights that she answered were for little things like a resident who was on a fluid restriction wanting water or wanting their TV turned to a channel that the TV was already on. Those were the only 2 lights that were on according to my nurse. The Don was furious that she had to drive down there to answer those lights since they didn't even need anything. Welcome to CNA work, which. The next day, we had a new in-service that said we can take our lunch in the break room, and they put a sad excuse of a blind on the glass door of the break room. They also put a sign on the break room that said, "Staff only." This didn't stop residents from going in it though. The in-service also said that if there is only one aide on the hall, that aide cannot leave the hall unless they find another aide to watch it while they're gone. Sadly, she didn't stop bothering the nurses. I know some people would think we went too far with our compliance, but they were threatening termination for eating in front of the residents and for not taking a lunch break. I was suspended for 3 days before this compliance for not taking a lunch break, so there was nothing left to do but malicious compliance. The Don and the administrator of the facility kissed up hardcore to the residents, which is why we had stupid rules like that. Thankfully, both of them are gone. I was told by the next Don that the write-up and suspension would not be on my record, and they paid me for the 3 days I missed because there was no wrongdoing. The next one is titled, "Ask for less money than what we were going to give you. We'll oblige." A true Karen of a woman. This conversation occurred after a lady, let's honor the tradition and call her Karen. Sorry to any actual Karens, called in the evening with all services down. We found a problem and scheduled a tech dispatch for the morning 2 days later. Karen was rude throughout the interaction. "So, you gonna give me my money back for the time without the service, right? We can certainly offer you some adjustment. I can credit your account with a $5 flat rate for each day without service, including today and the day the issue is going to be resolved, so for 3 days that would be $15. Oh hell no. I pay a fortune for your service and a measly $5 per day ain't gonna cover it. Is this how you treat your loyal customers? Do you think this is fair? Shove your flat rate up your butt and give me back what I'm actually paying for your damn services." Well, I was fairly certain that she is not paying us $150 per month. Just very few customers do, and I knew what services she had, so I was happy to oblige with a huge grin on my face. "I'm sorry Karen, of course, if you prefer, I can calculate the exact amount for you. I'm pulling up the bill as we speak." In sarcastic tone, "Yeah, great. Now you are finally doing what was supposed to happen in the first place. Good job. So, Karen, I have your bill in front of me. I see here that you pay us $90 each month. If we divide that by 30 days, that's $3 per day, and the total adjustment would be $9. Would you like to go?" Was gonna offer the original $15 but got cut off. "Oh, duck you, you smart butt piece of crap. Who do you think you are? How dare you? I want to speak to your supervisor." Well, it was a really busy evening, as most evenings are, and we waited about 20 minutes for some Tier 2 supervisor to take over the call. For the entire duration of the wait, she refused to talk to me like I care. 20-minute break. Finally, I was next in the queue for Tier 2 and was assigned to a dear friend of mine who was well known for being hella smart but also not taking customers' crap. I gave him the customer and continued working. Later that day, I met my friend on a smoke break, and he told me the rest of her story. Yeah, she was like an angel when she got to me. They often are to seem more credible, like they are the victims. She told me you were rude, blah blah blah, and that you offered her $15 and then refused to give it to her. He of course knew what happened. We give them brief recaps. So, I told her that while agents can give flat rate adjustments to streamline the process, I as a supervisor need to adhere to the rules more strictly, and $9 is the fair and the only adjustment I can offer. She said that's fine because she doesn't care about the money. She wanted to help us improve our customer service by kindly letting us know about a rude agent in our ranks. So yes, after more than half an hour on the phone with us, she walked away with $9 and we laughed about this one for a long time. Big Mama out. The next one is titled, You Asked for a Deep Tissue Massage. So, I am a massage therapist, and I have a reputation for my firm pressure and deep tissue. Tonight, I had a male client who came in, and off the bat, was extremely rude. He was someone I had never seen before, and from the start, he felt my establishment had not met his needs. I start with the usual verbal conversation and set up to cover our ground rules due to current health standards. I calmly explain that the rules are there for his safety as well as my own. He tolerates my going through the details, but I can just feel it is far from over. He tells me about his problems, in which I begin asking how he feels about certain areas being worked that require permission. Again, he cuts me off and starts telling me that I'm the therapist and should know what he needs and wants. Again, I explain it's protocol for his and my safety. Jerk then goes off about it being a waste of time and that the entire spa is useless. Overall, just rude comments that I finally tuned out. I can feel my blood boiling, and I'm about to just refuse the service when I catch the last of what he's saying. I come in here needing a deep tissue, and they give me the timidest therapist they can. You obviously have no idea nor the ability to give me the pressure I want. I take a deep breath and give him the biggest smile I can muster and say, I'm sorry, sir, but could you tell me again what kind of pressure you wanted today? Firm and heavy. Deep tissue. Yeah, but if your hands are as soft as you look, then you probably need help. Maybe you should bring someone in with you who can show you what to do. I just smile and leave the room, informing him I would return to perform the service, giving him time to get on my table. I tell my boss what is going on and learn he was rude to the front desk staff as well, and she asks me if I wish to refuse service because his behavior is unacceptable, and I tell her I'll take care of it. I go back into the room, and the first thing he asks me is if I brought someone with more experience. I smiled wickedly, knowing he was prone and could not see my expression. Sir, I assure you that I am more than capable of meeting your request. Maybe if you'd lay off the sugars and work on your structure, you probably could. Tell you what, sweetie, just give me everything you got, and maybe it will tickle. Now, I am not a small or muscular person by any means. I am about 5 feet 7 inches, and I don't consider myself fat, but I have a big stature. I come off nice and pleasant as well, so most don't know my capabilities. At this point, I drape for the back, lower the table as low as I can, crack my knuckles, apply gel to my hands, and press down into my first stroke with every ounce of pressure I can muster. I hear him gasp for breath in surprise. I do my entire warm-up like this until he finally manages to hiss out, "Too much, too much." I stop and say, "Well, sweetie, these are just the warm-up strokes. Is the pressure bad, or do I need to get someone more qualified, or can I start the massage now?" He was defeated and said he got the picture. He now knew I was more than capable of the task. He didn't say anything else. He didn't apologize to me, but the front girls told me he did apologize to them for his behavior and asked to never see me again. He also stiffed me on my tip. My boss asked me what happened, and I told her. She laughed and said, "Well, he did ask for deep tissue." I suppose the moral here is to not mess with the massage therapist who is nicknamed Amazonian Hands. The last one is titled, Of Course You Can Talk to Wendy. Our manager. My first job when I was a teenager in the late 1990s was at a certain fast food restaurant whose mascot is a red-headed girl. The pay was horrible, even for those times, and management was generally belligerent and incompetent, but it was a job and gave me lots of stories. Now, given that we were a restaurant named after a person whose founder became the face of the restaurant in television commercials up to his death, we frequently had jerks come through who thought it was cute to say things like, "Is Wendy there?" or, when they're angry, "I know Dave Thomas, and I'm going to get you fired." It was so annoying because it wasn't cute since it happened dozens of times a day, especially late at night on second shift. Now, at the time this takes place, a new manager had just completed her training, and it was one of her first times managing by herself. I was working on drive-through when a couple of guys start going on the speaker, "Is Wendy there? We want to talk to Wendy." I try to ignore them since, as I said, this is a frequent occurrence, but these guys just don't know when to stop and just keep saying it all through their order. I was having a bad night. I hated working drive-through more than any other station at the restaurant, so their antics, which would probably just make me roll my eyes today, were beginning to make my blood boil. They get to my window, and they're these two redneck-looking 20-something guys who just keep giggling about how funny and clever they are. I really don't think they were high or drunk given their demeanor. I just think they thought they were delivering comedy club-worthy material. I'm trying to hand them their drinks and they just keep asking for Wendy. "Where is she?" one asks. "We want to talk to Wendy," the other one says. I've finally had about enough, and that's when I get a plan for malicious compliance. I go over and get my manager and tell her that there are two guys at the window who want to talk to Wendy. She grins, knowing exactly what I'm thinking, and walks over, opens the window, and looks at the guys. "Hi, I'm Wendy, the manager here. I heard you want to talk with me. How can I help you?" The guys just think this is the most hilarious thing ever and start erupting in laughter, when she looks at them dead serious and points at her name tag. "No, really, my name is Wendy. How can I help you tonight?" They get really quiet and look at each other. You can tell this wasn't how they expected this to go, and they seem to have no witty retorts in them for if Wendy was actually there. Can we have some ketchup?" one of them finally asks. Wendy smiles, puts some ketchup in their bag, and hands them their order. The two drive off without another word while Wendy and I break down in laughter at what we just did. In the long run, what we did that night didn't stop other amateur comedians from asking for Wendy, but it sure did feel good nonetheless. In a generally sucky job that could be really hostile at times, Wendy was a pretty cool boss. Wherever she is today, I hope she's living her best life. Thanks for listening.